You want me to start us off here? Okay. I'm Kenny Brown. I've lived in Sumter County, Gallatin, all my life. I was born in Pleasant Grove, Tennessee. That's a little community above Westmoreland, and moved to Gallatin about 1948 when I was in the third grade, and been here since that time, except the years I was in college in Knoxville. And a lot of relatives, a lot of good friends, and living in a great place. And this is Mr. Taylor here, and he's with me today.
Well, Kenny, I was born up in Gainesburg, Tennessee, and 1921, September the 5th.
And you got me by about 20 years.
I'm 93 years old, and I used to sell watermelons out here on the square in 1935, and cantaloupes. I sold watermelons for 15 cents. I sold a cantaloupe for 10 cents. There's a lot of difference in the old days and the new days, so that I love Gallatin, and Gallatin has changed so much, and in a good way, so I'm hoping to spend the rest of my life here.
Well, my first selling experience was in Gallatin, and this was probably around 1950. I walked up and down Main Street here selling Grit newspapers for 10 cents a piece. Now, not many people probably remember the Grit newspaper, but it was a national newspaper that came into town, and that was my first selling experience.
Well, I came back home after the war, and I couldn't get a job doing nothing. So I had a friend that I met when I was in the service, and I called him up, and I got a job in New York. I worked in Wall Street for 17 years. I worked for the stock exchange, and I also had a big marina in Atlantic City, New Jersey, and I run that for a few years, and then I went to Florida. I lived there 41 years in Naples, Florida, and I moved back home here about 10 and 12 years ago, but I always had a house in Tennessee and a little farm, and Tennessee is my state, and I love it, so I enjoy coming back to my hometown and being here with my family and my friends.
Well, I'll agree. Tennessee is, I think, the greatest place you could ever want to live, and especially in Gallatin, Tennessee. I've been to several places, and well, I was always happy to be back, to come back. And
nothing like home, son. There's nothing like home.
Nothing like home. I guess work experience, other than selling Grit newspapers, we moved here in about 1948, and my dad first, he was a power lineman back in his younger days, and then when he had 4 children, he decided that was probably a little bit too dangerous of work, so he came to Gallatin from Westmoreland, and opened the old he had a restaurant at the Triangle Service Station, and that lasted for a year or two, and then he got into the furniture business. That lasted for a year or two, and then he decided that he would start building houses. So he ended up being one of the first contractors here in town, home builder and developer, and so I used to go out on the jobs with him and help do a little work, like digging cesspools and putting I got all the good jobs, that's what I had as a young person. But one thing it did do, it helped make me probably a little bit stronger than most kids, and from that I was able to go and play pretty good high school football player, and went to the University of Tennessee, and which I have to say most of that was probably because I worked hard growing up.
Right. I grew up on a farm down here in Cages Bend, and there was 5 of us boys, We farmed all the time up till I went to service. I spent 4 years and 20 days in the service. I was in the MPs for 3 years. I was in the Air Force, 8th Air Force, for a little over a year. And then the war was over, and I come back home, and that, like I say, that time I was no job sure hardly at all, but that's the way it was. So I stayed up in New York with my friends that I met in the service, and that's where I ended up at, and retired from up there.
Well, you mentioned Cage's Bend. I remember one summer my dad was we were building a place out off of Old Scottsville Pike, and I lived at the corner of Cage's Bend and Nashville Pike there. It was a home that I.C. McMahon owned, and of course I remember, and you probably remember the Franklins that used to have.
I went to school with them.
Went to school with all of them.
I went to school with all of them.
All the Franklins that lived there at the Cage's Bend, and
Went there, number one.
number one, there was a community, and of course later after I'd graduated from college, I came back to Gallatin and went to work with Security Federal, and I got to know Mr. L.A. Green Sr. And Mr. Senior, he lived there in the home where Frank G. now lives, and he was the fellow that actually owned the land that where Ball State is now, and I understand that he gave that land to Ball State. I remember traveling with him one time to an auction sale, and he bought, I believe it was the Frisch property there where Walmart is and all this, and he bought that around 1965 or 66, and a very large property owner there, most of where Fairview is now, and all. He was the owner of that, and of course his son and grandson they took it over, and that's where we have all the development and everything is, the premier spot, and I think are probably in the state of Tennessee, if not in our Mid-South, because you're not going to find anything any better anywhere.
Did you know Lewis Green?
I did.
Lewis was a friend of mine, and all the Franklins, Billy and John, all those. So
I met them all, and even had an opportunity to meet Mr. Will Weems when I was very young. He was the owner of Fairview.
Fairview, yeah.
I spent one day with him, and the stories that he told were just unbelievable. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I remember that about the gates at Fairview, and about the things that he had done, how he acquired the property, and where all that came about, and it was a good history lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, I really wanted to come back home so bad after the war and live back here, but like I said, I couldn't get a job doing anything with paying any money, so I had a good job in New York. I was with my own business there, and like I said, I had a big marina in Atlantic City, New Jersey.
Is that right?
And I married a lady, Ann Townley, and she was vice president of 29 banks, and she had her own employees, and that also she was a lawyer for the banks, and so we moved to Florida, and I opened a restaurant called the Blue Heron Inn, and they're still famous today in Naples, Florida.
When you were living at Cage's Bend, did you ever remember a fellow by the name of Judge Spurlock?
I don't think so.
I don't think so.
No.
He lived there on Douglas Bend Road, and he was.
I know the Cages, all the Cages, and And